I'm turning my card-based tabletop role-playing game into a fully fledged deck builder. That's right, a role-playing game like Dungeons & Dragons, but with the deck-building mechanics of something like Slay the Spire. Not only that, but doing so solves a bunch of problems generally experienced in many tabletop RPGs. Hi, I'm Nathan, and this is my sci-fi role-playing game called Seoul. Now you might be saying, Nathaniel, you're just making this game into a deck builder because it's popular right now. And to that, I say, you're right. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hoping that a popular game genre wouldn't help promote my game. But even though that is true, that's not really the reason I decided to make this change. It's actually because it solves a lot of problems in my game. But before I explain why I did it, let's explain what I actually did. To start, I'm going to use an action system similar to version 2 of my game called Concentration. Each point of concentration essentially counts as one action. The exception here is that more powerful cards may cost more than one concentration to use. This is going to be similar to Hearthstone's mana system or Slay the Spire's energy system. A player will start the game with 3 concentration and be allowed to spend it on various cards on their turn. After spending it, their concentration will regenerate when it becomes their turn again. As for the cards themselves, there are 3 different types of playable cards. Basic actions. These cards allow you to perform a simple action, mainly one of your equipped items, such as a weapon to attack an enemy. As a note here, there will be an inventory system where you have separate cards equipped, but that's for another video. Physical abilities. Generally, these are things that can be done within human means, or alien means, or whatever. Something like the Knight's Cleave ability, which makes a sweep attack hitting multiple enemies, or the Medic's First Aid ability, which allows them to heal a target even when it's not on their turn. And lastly, nano abilities. I won't kid myself, this is basically a magic system under the guise of technology. This allows a character to perform actions and go beyond what's normally possible, such as Medic being able to use mass healing, which allows them to heal allies in an area. This also helps to explain older abilities like the DJ's Scale ability, which allows you to change the size of other characters' abilities. A player will choose an assortment of these cards from a class or multiple classes to build a deck. Once they have their deck, they can use these abilities in-game, especially during combat. Once combat begins, a player will draw 6 cards and be able to choose what actions to perform by playing these cards and using concentration to do so. Once a card is played, it goes into a discard pile and cannot be played again until their deck is empty. I'm still debating on whether a player's hand refreshes every turn, or if they can retain their cards and draw enough to fill their hand. Playtesting is probably in order to decide which one's best, but let me know what you think. Either way, that's the general premise of the deck building aspect, so let's explain why I actually made this choice. For those of you who play games like Dungeons & Dragons, will likely know this sort of situation. Your party gets into a fight with some enemies, and it gets to your fighter's turn. Your dungeon master asks a fighter what they would like to do, and they say attack one of their enemies with their legendary magic sword. They attack, and then the DM asks what they would like to do with their 3 additional actions. And they simply say they want to attack with their sword again, even though there might be more interesting options that the character might have. This continues until they're out of actions or the enemy is dead. Now, you may blame the fighter for playing the game in an uninteresting or boring way. However, well, they may have other actions at their disposal. Using their legendary sword is likely the most effective option for dealing with enemies. And while it may be true that it isn't the most interesting, you can't really blame them for using their best action they can. We had the exact same issue in Seoul, and for that reason we came up with this design philosophy. The mechanics should never encourage a meta or perfect strategy. Players should never be able to repeat an action or a set of actions ad nauseum. And that's where the deck building mechanics come in. At the start of combat, a player will only have 6 cards, likely meaning they won't always be able to perform their best action and have to adapt to what's given to them. Even in the case of attacking with their weapon, they may only have so many basic actions, forcing them to use some sort of other action. Not only is this good for allowing players to have a diversity in actions, but it will also make combat encounters more interesting as a whole. Not only does a player have to overcome their abilities of their enemy, but also adapt to the abilities available to them. Now, this one arguably will have to be tested, but again, you've likely encountered a scenario in other games like D&D where a wizard-type character sits there for 3 minutes digging through their character sheet and trying to find what spell will work in this specific situation. With a limit on the cards, a player will only be able to choose the actions that are in front of them, which should limit their options and allow the game to run a little more smoothly. For our last example, how many times in an RPG have you used an ability on an enemy, or group of enemies, that causes a status effect, like a burn, or poison, or sleep, and have forgotten to apply it each turn, or forgotten which one of your enemies is affected by it? Or how many times has your character yourself been affected by a status effect, and forgotten the next time your turn rolls around? This problem is solved using cards. Look at a game like Slay the Spire. When you're affected by a status, it's shuffled into your deck, and then when you draw that card, it's applied to you. This is exactly how it works in Seoul. Say you're lit on fire. A burn card will be added to your deck, and upon drawing it, you'll take that damage. This way, a player will never forget to apply this status effect when it's on their turn. There may be other ways that these changes help the game, but I just haven't discovered them yet, and I'm excited to see what they may be. Anyway, thanks for watching, and whoa. Hold on, Nathaniel, I hear you say. Didn't you say in your design philosophy video you didn't want a game with heavy mechanics? And isn't a deck builder super mechanically heavy? Not only that, but tabletop RPGs are supposed to allow players to do anything they want. This seems a bit restrictive. And if you are in fact saying that, you would be right. Anyway, thanks for watching, and okay, fine, okay, fine. I'll explain myself. All right. Well, I realize a deck builder is mechanically heavy. At some point, a role-playing game has to be an actual game, like the game part. And I feel in this case, it's worth the risk. It just means I'm gonna have to be even more careful when designing my abilities in such a way to promote roleplay and avoid nitty-gritty mechanics-based abilities. For instance, abilities allow you to draw more cards, or even use abilities for free. Well, a few abilities like this could be good. Allowing players to infinitely draw cards, like a Shiv build in Slay the Spire, might end up being a little bit much. And as for a player not being allowed to do what they want, yeah, that's also true. However, I like to think of this system like the options your character can come up with in any given moment. That being said, I do have some mechanics planned that circumvent this issue rather than me just using a narrative explanation. For one, if a player's not in combat, they can use an ability at any time, allowing diversity in roleplay without any consequences. As for in combat, a player can do what I'm calling a focused draw. This spends a concentration to allow a player to dig through their deck and pick out a specific card. This will allow players the freedom to do what they want, coming at a bit of a cost. However, this unfortunately isn't enough on its own. As suppose a player has 3 concentration and wants to draw a 3-cost card. They're required to spend 1 concentration to focus draw the card, meaning they only have 2 concentration left. Now, if I allow cards to persist between turns, this might be okay, but I have another mechanic to actually help. This is tentatively called limit breaking. This allows a character to sacrifice a portion of their health to gain more actions. This allows a character to overexert themselves in order to accomplish what they want. In this instance, it's to use a 3-cost card that they wouldn't normally be able to use. This would allow a character to draw a 3-cost card with a focus draw and then still be able to use it. And lastly, are free actions and roleplay actions. Free actions are things characters can do that don't require concentration or a card. This would generally be something like talking to another character, or something potentially that doesn't warrant a full concentration to perform, like turning on a light switch or picking something up. This would generally be based on the GM's discretion though, as is very situation-based. And roleplay actions would be actions that do not require a card to perform, but still require concentration. Roleplay actions are exclusive to actions that do not cause any other character direct or even indirect harm. This allows a player to still do cool narrative things, even if they don't have the cards in their hand to do it. These are also sort of necessary, as if you have a party member who's dangling off an edge and you're trying to save them, but don't actually have a basic action in your hand, you can still actually do that. So I think that's everything for real this time. I have plenty of other cool ideas I want to show off to you guys, but it's probably better for another video. Let me know what you think about turning a tabletop RPG into a deck builder. I'd be really curious to hear your opinions and if you have any cool ideas. And on that note, if you want to get involved with the creation of this game, feel free to check out my Discord channel. I'll be sharing stuff like new card designs, and along with having discussions and asking for your input on the game. You can also check out our website, soulrpg.com, if you're looking to play the old version of the game. Anyway, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.